My name is Dr. Brisa Quiroz, and I'm the Director of Accessibility Education at Microsoft. I'm very excited to be your moderator for today's panel discussion on why and how employers, nonprofits, and educators are investing in accessibility training as a key skill for tomorrow's workforce. Accessibility is more than just compliance. It's about inclusion, innovation, and ensuring that technology and workplaces are designed for everyone. Today, we'll hear from experts across different sectors who are actively shaping the future of accessibility training. But before we dive in, I would like to introduce our panel. We have Annie Lano from Honeywell. Secondly, we have our colleague Erica Salmanowicz from Microsoft. We also have Sudi Shayaste from Hunter College in New York. And finally, we have Rolando Mendez from Teach Access. Thank you all for being here. But now let's get started with our first question. So can each of you share your journey into the field of accessibility training and what inspired you to work on this area? So let's start first with Annie.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me today. Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Lano. I lead accessibility for Honeywell. I oversee our program of accessibility for our employees, our products, our digital and physical spaces. And my journey into accessibility is probably similar to a lot of other people in the sense that I have a personal experience with this. I identify and am a proud member of the disability community. I'm low vision or legally blind. And so my journey with accessibility started early. I came up through the education system with a disability and had to kind of figure out how to make things work for my specific user needs. So very similar to, I'm sure, a lot of other people in the disability community. My formal background is in HR and in the learning and development space. So prior to coming to Honeywell about 9 years ago, got a degree in and a master's degree in HR, and then moved into the learning and development space. So got some really good experience in instructional design and became very passionate about accessibility and ensuring that everyone had access to the work that we were doing at Honeywell. Prior to this role, I had been very active in our employee network group, our All Abilities employee network group as the accessibility chair and leader, and so had done that work for about 4 years before positioning for a full-time position and a function in this space at Honeywell. So really proud to share that last year in May, I started as Honeywell's first accessibility program enterprise leader. And so, really excited to be here today talking to you all a little bit about accessibility in the learning space.
Thank you, Annie, because I can see your energy. So I think Honeywell is in a great position here. So let's hear from Erica.
Hi, my name is Erica Zelmanowicz. I lead accessibility training at Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft for about 7.5 years doing accessibility training. I got into accessibility really because I have an uncle with cerebral palsy. I grew up, seeing how he, walked around the environment, explored, learned in different ways that he was adapting to his ecosystem. And so what I did was I really thought that I was going to be a special education teacher. I got a master's in special education and realized that I really had a passion around assistive technology. And so I started working for a nonprofit where I was working directly with the community, going to people's homes, schools, teaching people how to use assistive technology. And I was finding that there were many instances where the AT was not actually working properly, but it wasn't the AT, it was the product or the service that they were using. And so I really wanted to find out, why is this website not working? Like, why can this person not navigate? And so I learned some very basic coding. And from there, I worked from the other side, the consulting side. So I did accessibility testing. I was doing training. So really training customers on how to build their products in an accessible way. And then lucky for me, I found my way to Microsoft, where I have been able to, use my passion for education and for training and to train our customers and our employees on how to make their products and services accessible. So also really excited to be here.
Thank you, Erica. I just want to add, really, Erica, she dedicates a lot of time creating all the content. If you have time, check our resources. Microsoft, we have these wonderful trainings, and thank you to all the hard work that Erica's doing. So thank you, Erica. So Sudi, can we hear from your accessibility journey?
Yes, thank you so much, Marisa. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. Yes, as you mentioned, my name is Sudi Shayeste. I've been in the field of disabilities and accessibilities for almost 30 years. I started my career as a school psychologist. So I worked with Board of Education. I did daily psychoeducational evaluations. And then about 28 years ago, I moved into higher education. My passion started with trying to help children and young adults with disabilities navigating school, college, and eventually the workspace. As the director of the Office of Accessibility at Hunter College, we serve the largest population of disabled students, over almost 2,000 students. We're going to reach 2,000 students this year. Now, I've been firsthand notice how accessibility can completely change a student's experience and even shift the culture of an entire institution. Early on, I noticed how digital and physical barriers made learning harder than it needed to be for students with disabilities. And that realization pushed me to make accessibility more than just an afterthought. It needs to be a proactive, built-in part of education. So when it's done right, accessibility training isn't just about meeting requirements. It's about independence, self-advocacy, and giving students the confidence to fully engage in their education and careers. And that has been always my goal. As you mentioned, I work directly, not just with the students, I work with faculty. Excuse me. I train the students, faculty, and the staff. I noticed that the whole culture in the institution is changing, making accessibility more interwoven into the everyday interaction with the students and in the classrooms, and not just about addressing emergencies, but really making sure we can accommodate the students ahead of time before something goes wrong. So that has been my goal and my passion, and I'm working towards that.
Thank you, Sudi. And I know Rolando is eager to go next because he was agreeing with everything that you were saying. So Rolando, let's hear from you.
Thanks, Marisa. I'm really glad to be here. I am Rolando Mendez, Director of Education at Teach Access. And most of my professional career has been in higher education, but I did not start specifically as an educator. I was a communicator, but equity and inclusion has always been at the center of the work that I've done. Then a couple of years later, I turned into educator because I wanted to teach the next generation of communication professionals. And one thing led to another, and I ended up chairing a department for our university's online learning system or online learning programs, which were all housed in the same department. And as a department chair, we were really interested in learning or exploring how to make our education or educational experiences or courses or services more accessible. We were really having a little bit of a challenge having someone to come up and own the project and kind of like lead everyone else towards that. Coincidentally, I had to travel to Colombia for a conference in 2016 or 17. And I signed up because I needed to sign up for a particular pre-conference workshop. And it ended being creating accessible documents. And right there, I fell in love with accessibility. And I thought why I should be doing more of this. And there's more to be done. So a couple of years spent in higher education. Then I got an invitation later from Kate Sonka, our executive director at Teach Access, to be part of an advisory board to help shape the organization's educational programming strategy. That gave me a more understanding about, all the work that I've been doing was towards what we call teaching accessibly, or making sure that our courses, services, or environments are inclusive to people with disabilities. But then I heard about this thing about how do you build that next workforce with these skills. So that's when I fell in love with it. And a couple of months later, an opening for a director of education came up, and I said, you know what, there's so much more to be done. And I think I want to spend the next years of my life kind of focusing on and getting more people to fall in love with accessibility and kind of be more engaged with it and work towards this goals that I've been working for the past couple of years. So that's how I ended up here. And I really enjoy doing this every day.
Thank you, Orlando, because really we at Microsoft, we collaborate a lot with Teach Access, and this is an effort that is not only one company or one college, like we need different stakeholders. So I think Teach Access is the point, the center of everyone, the different stakeholders. So we're like achieving more. So I appreciate that you're here sharing your story. So let's go to the next question. Okay. Can you discuss any successful initiatives or projects in accessibility training that have made a substantial impact on your work? And what are some of the most significant challenges that you face in promoting accessibility training with your organizations? And let's start with Rolando first.
Sure. I think I'll start with the challenges first and then with the successful initiatives. And some of the things that we've noticed while working with different institutions in higher education, when it comes to, creating awareness about accessibility training and education, is sometimes there's a limited awareness of accessibility and its importance, depending on who we're talking to. There might be some just like, yeah, we know it's a legal thing, or we know that we should be doing this, but they've kind of failed to grasp the complexity of it and how it needs to be embedded, like Sudi mentioned, in the culture. It needs to be embedded in the organizational culture. And it's not something that is led from a specific team. It's something that it falls on every person in the organization. Also, when we also see that we have to kind of like talk about two things: teaching accessibly, as I mentioned, because that's where most of the faculty are at, and then that's where they understand accessibility or frame it within their teaching practices and within the classroom. But then we want to move them or move the needle towards teaching accessibility to their students. But then what we see is that they have some uncertainty about how does accessibility apply to different disciplines, such as marketing, human resources. Why can I teach about accessibility to my students, right? And also, like, there's difficulty on determining what to teach and how to teach that effectively. Also, tendency to overlook or minimize disability-related content and accessibility training. One of the things that we also notice is sometimes we go straight to the technical guidelines, principles, standards, and how to do it, but we often fail to, or within these trainings, we fail to frame it within disability and assistive technology. And this is what we're doing accessibility for. We are doing accessibility for. So, and it's a big component of whatever we do. We start with those two topics, and then we move onto accessible design. And also that misconception that accessibility training is a one-time effort rather than an ongoing practice. We like to say it's not a checklist. We are never done. It's not one training, one course I took, one thing I did. Is like an ongoing process where we're collaborating and iterating. And those are some of the challenges that we face. But in terms of the successful initiatives, I think one of the most successful initiatives we had is the Teach Access Fellowship Program. And we started that program 2 years ago. When we started, it was just a spring, and we did like a couple of sessions, but it has evolved into a year-long professional development program. And we've seen how faculty with the right support, with the right curriculum, as well with the right opportunities to create community, they can understand and they can eliminate these challenges, and they can face these challenges, and they feel eager and interested and excited to start teaching the next generation of accessibility professionals, as well as people who have a basic understanding of accessibility.
I appreciate you, Rolando, sharing this with us. So let's move to Sudi. What are some opportunities and challenges that you see in higher education regarding accessibility training?
I'm going to also start with challenges. One of the biggest challenges in accessibility, I think, that I've learned, accessibility training, is shifting the mindset from checking the compliance box to actually embracing inclusion, talking about universal design of learning, universal design of teaching, so forth and so on. Many times, accessibility is treated like an extra step rather than something that should be part of the process from the beginning. So, another big hurdle we experience is getting enough resources. I mean, there's a huge acknowledgement out there that accessibility is a must, is legal, is part of the regulations, is a federal law. We have to follow it, so forth and so on. But getting the actual resources to make this as part of embed this in the culture and make it as part of the ongoing processes where students are teaching in the class or Office of Disability Services providing the services outside the class has been difficult. I'll give you an example. New York State Disability Service, our budgets hasn't changed for 25 years. We get our funding from New York State Department of Education. Every year we go out there and ask for more money. The numbers of the students are increasing on a daily basis. The number of staffing, the need for accommodations on a daily basis is increasing, but the funding stays the same. So that is a huge thing. I mean, that is a huge hurdle for Office of Disabilities and across the state. I don't know about other states, but definitely I can speak on behalf of New York State. In terms of successful initiatives and trainings, like I said, we always go out there and we try to promote accessibility by participating in meetings, providing in-house visitations, sharing the benefits of technology, training the staff to advocate for use of technology inside or outside the classroom. And there's a fear out there of technology that's a known factor. It's something I don't know how to touch it. I don't know how to use it. So we always try to promote that, with a little bit of training, this is something they can definitely manage. The health faculty design accessible courses, CUNY-wide, whether it's in person, online, or hybrid. We have integrated assistive tech and inclusive teaching methods into the teaching. We have made assistive tools more available, such as screen readers, speech-to-text softwares, captioning, especially important for online learning. We have also continued to empower students, such as training on how to use assistive technology or how to even advocate for themselves. At the end of the day, accessibility and technology goes hand in hand. It's not just about providing accommodations. It's about creating an environment where students with disabilities can really thrive. And it sounds such a cliche, but it's not really. I mean, you observe students that use the technology, use towards their accommodations, and how empowered they feel when they feel independent, when they feel like they can manage on their daily, day-to-day activities and learning experiences. So that's very empowering.
Thank you, Suri, to sharing that story. I think again we need to understand that higher education, we're limited in resources, but the passion is there. So I appreciate that you have your heart in the right field for many years. So we need more Suris in higher education. So, but now let's hear from Erica, because we need to share about what the wonderful things that we're doing at Microsoft.
Yeah, so I like to think of challenges as opportunities. So the first one being discoverability and awareness. There are people, many hundreds of thousands of people that work at Microsoft. People come to Microsoft with various levels of knowledge of accessibility. And so one thing that we have done is to provide required training. One of our required trainings is an all-company training for it's all employees, vendors, anybody that is working in the Microsoft ecosystem, and it's on all things compliance. So we embed accessibility as part of that training. And then separately, we have an all-company training just focused on accessibility. Really exciting to see the responses that we get, the feedback. People really enjoy it. And then also just the questions that we get from that training. People are wanting more. And so just really excited to see where that goes. The second one is maintaining momentum. So Rolando said, it's not a one-time thing. Accessibility is a journey. And so one of the things that we try to do is integrate accessibility training within existing workflows. So instead of treating accessibility as a separate initiative, we're embedding accessibility checkpoints in our development and design processes. We make it easy for people to learn about accessibility on the job. So for example, within our products, like in M365, within the accessibility checker, there's real-time training. So if you need to fix something within a document, there's a button that says, how do I fix this? Why do I do this? That kind of thing. And so real time in the product training is really, really helpful to keep that momentum going. The next one is scale. So we're seeing the speed of change in tech. It's extremely rapid, especially in this era of AI. And we need to maintain that speed while also providing thoughtful skilling opportunities for people to help either advance their careers, gain new skills, or just learn something new. And so I'm going to give a couple examples of how we're doing this. The first one is we've teamed up with New York City to roll out accessibility training across all city departments. That's for 300,000 employees. So we created a package of content that any customer, partner, anyone out there can leverage within their learning management system. It's made up of 6 modules. They're all individual, so organizations can take individual modules. They can take all of the modules embedded in their learning management system. And this is exactly what New York City did. We created some custom content for New York City, rolled it out. And so really excited to see, how New York City employees are taking that training. I'm excited to hear the feedback, and then we can iterate on that. The second one is our work with the Department of Work and Pensions in the UK. So we worked with them to train 27,000 work coaches who are then working directly with the disability community. So really skilling people up on how to work with people with disabilities, the technology that people use. And so we're really starting to see the benefits there. I'm excited to keep expanding the efforts and reach more people. Our approach really focuses on making accessibility a continuous journey rather than a one-time training event. So, there's multiple touch points, reinforced learning, and we provide ongoing support for implementation.
Thank you, Erica. I just want to share with everyone, I'm originally from Mexico. So in some cultures, you don't talk about disabilities, you don't talk about these. So when I moved from higher education, when I joined Microsoft and we have the accessibility training, for me was like, wow, like really at Microsoft, we want the best, and that includes everyone. Now that I'm part of the accessibility team, like I see my colleagues, they're rock stars, right? Let's hear from Annie now, because I want to hear what Honeywell is doing.
Yeah, no, and thanks so much. I would echo a lot of the opportunity space that my fellow panelists have shared. I think it's really interesting actually to hear all of your experience, especially in the higher ed space, and maybe taking a little bit of a different approach and similar maybe to Erica's responses around like corporate training and learning around this space. One of the things that I think we've tried to overcome at the beginning of our journey with accessibility at Honeywell is explaining to people the why. So what is the business case for why we should incorporate accessibility and disability inclusion into our workplace? I think anyone you ask that question to is going to say it's the right thing to do, which I think, everyone on this call probably absolutely agrees with. I absolutely agree with it. Our organization agrees with it. But then there's also this really compelling business case to it. And I think giving leaders and businesses the visibility to that business case as to why this isn't just the right thing to do, it's actually the smart thing to do from a business standpoint, doesn't just make this an inclusion effort, which is of course important and something we all strive for, but it actually makes it a business imperative. And I think that for us has been part of, as we talk about accessibility training and learning, how we can get and continue to get momentum at Honeywell. And so I always start my conversations off with my business leaders and the teams I work with, talking a little bit about why this is such an important topic, not just for us as a effort towards our inclusion and diversity efforts or our social sustainability goals, but how actually it can help drive innovation for our customers. And I think Microsoft is a really great example of that. We continue to, partner with you all and learn from your example in this space. But, a couple stats I share with folks when I start this conversation is that when we think about this community, I think there's this common misconception that disability is a small subset of the population. It's not. It's 1.3 billion people and growing, according to the World Health Organization. That's 70% of the population of that population have hidden disabilities. So you wouldn't necessarily recognize that, they're part of this community. And so that's why we should be thinking about this in terms of the work we do. It's not just that this is a very small, unique experience. It's something that, we will all experience in our lifetime, temporary or otherwise. And so as we start to think about it and build solutions, products to serve our greater customer base, they have to account for these types of user experiences. And so I think that's a really important component to accessibility that oftentimes is overlooked when we talk about this in relation to accessible design. And so, I echo a lot of what my fellow panelists were talking about as it relates to it's seen as a compliance requirement. But when we start to kind of flip the script and talk about all the innovation that this community has brought to the world, from things like closed captioning to curb cuts that enable, like physical design access, there's so much that we can learn from this community that provide value for everyone and kind of transcend into this universal design concept. So I start by saying that because that's how a lot of our conversations around learning start. It's really why is this a business imperative? Why is this important to companies like Honeywell to really drive our goal of creating, value and innovative products for our customers? So I start there. And then what we've been doing at Honeywell that I think is, similar to Microsoft. And again, we're learning a lot from you and have been partnering. Actually, it was cool, Erica, to hear what you guys are doing. We've done a lot of the same at Honeywell with integrating Microsoft's LMS trainings into our platform as well. So it's cool to hear you guys are working with other customers there too. But what we're also doing is very similar to what you're talking about. And we're thinking about training from a 70-20-10 model. So 70% of learning is on the job, 20% is through feedback and continual coaching. And then the 10% is like that e-learning, instructor-led learning. That's kind of how we think about learning at Honeywell. We have a platform called Accelerator. It's how we operate as an organization. It includes a really robust view of a lot of how our organization functions. So again, integrating into process, our accessibility checkpoints to make sure it's part of the on-the-job continuous requirement for people as they're thinking about this. It's kind of that continuous cycle as well. 20% making sure there are people within our staff who are educated and can help support from an accessibility compliance standpoint and really ensure people understand what it means to be accessible, thinking about digital standards, physical standards that we want to incorporate into those user experiences. And then, of course, leveraging people with disabilities to share their user stories and experiences. I love the saying, nothing for us without us. As a member of the community, I feel strongly about that. And then additionally, ensuring that they have on-time access to training and learning. So one of the things we're doing at Honeywell right now that I'm so excited about, we're actually building out what we're calling Accessibility Direct. It's going to be our, our one-stop shop for all things accessibility at Honeywell, and includes persona-driven training, resources, tooling, et cetera, to really enable and support our staff across different persona types who are trying to create with accessibility in mind. And so we're doing a lot in this space. We've been doing a lot with actually the Microsoft team to also leverage a lot of the learning you've created around the Microsoft suite as well to enable our staff to also understand and implement communications content, digital, et cetera, like with accessibility in mind. So that's been a great partnership we've been able to leverage. But we're continuing to learn and continuing to integrate more holistically to ensure that our staff really understands how to support all of our customers' needs, even those with disabilities.
So we have been talking a little bit about AI. So I think that's the term that we can ask our companies here about, like, how can artificial intelligence be leveraged to enhance accessibility training? And what potential does it have to make training more effective and inclusive? And can you share some examples of AI-driven accessibility training solutions? And we can start with Erica first.
Yeah, so I believe that AI has a ton of potential to really transform the way that we approach training. It could make it more personal, more responsive to people's needs. So really, it could be a game changer in the way that we train people in real time or in the moment. And this means that while I think it's very important to have baked curriculum embedded into the culture of your company or your organization, there is sometimes a need for that real-time training. And so waiting for like a scheduled training session or going through a full course might not be an option at that moment. And so this is where AI can really make a difference. So, and one of the examples that we have is a recently launched Ask Microsoft Accessibility chatbot. And so this is a tool that it uses AI to provide instant answers to accessibility related questions. So imagine like you're working on a project, you're not sure how to make a document accessible. Instead of looking through manuals or documentation, you could just ask MA. You can get the information you need right away. So it's really like just-in-time training, really helpful, makes it easy for everyone to stay on top of accessibility best practices. In addition to using AI to provide training, one of the things that I want to talk about is our need for skilling up the workforce in accessible AI. So making sure that the products that people are building are accessible, the AI products, as well as making sure that the outputs are also responsible and fair. And so we have a set of 8 courses available on creating accessible AI experiences. And so this is everything from the actual tool. So using the tool like Copilot with assistive technology, like a screen reader, making sure that those products work with assistive technology, without assistive technology. The second piece of that is making sure that the outputs are actually accessible and inclusive of people with disabilities. So for instance, if you were to ask a chatbot a question about disability and accessibility, is it representing disability appropriately? So really excited to see where this goes. I think that scaling up the workforce in accessible AI is super important, especially as the era of AI is rapidly changing and people are, coming into new roles where they need to learn skills in AI. I think it's super important that everybody gets these skills, not just people with disabilities, but everybody should learn how to design accessible AI.
I want to hear from Honeywell. What's AI like? Is it changing in accessibility training? Is it helping? Is it not? So can we hear from you, Annie?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think similar to what Erica shared at Honeywell, we've been leveraging AI, I think, in a couple of ways. So one, we've for our employees who are building with accessibility in mind, so more so just general upskilling, leveraging AI around accessibility. We've actually partnered with Copilot and Microsoft, so we use it as part of our GitHub offering for some of our developers, which has helped from a code standpoint ensure that we're integrating accessible code into our digital products. So that's been a great tool and resource we've been able to leverage from the Microsoft organization. And then additionally, we've also done a partnership. Or we, I guess, participated in a study that Microsoft and EY recently did looking at AI and the impacts on employees with disabilities. So how can it support as an assistive tech or assistive tool for people with disabilities, which I think is also a really cool component of AI in the learning space, is helping people with disabilities to consume information in a way that's accessible to them. To Erica's, I think, comment, and I would echo this, for AI to be effective for people with disabilities, it has to be inclusive and usable by people with disabilities. So platforms and user interfaces that are built and created for AI have to consider accessibility. Otherwise, people with disabilities can never interface with the learning model. And then that creates an inherent bias against people with disabilities. So it is really critical that as we're building out AI tools for our products and our customers, that we're considering accessibility. So it is a part of our governance structure as well to ensure accessibility is thought about in our AI deployment and process. And to that point, ensuring that it has knowledge, understanding of disability experiences, and can help support people who are maybe using some of our products in the industrial space, looking for support or help to really get that information as to how they can use our accessibility features or make things more accessible to them as they're using our products. So it's a little bit of, I guess, both how we're seeing it being deployed. And then I think the other cool part about AI is that it also has the opportunity and potential to really bring along people with disabilities into the workforce in ways that, like, maybe historically they haven't been able to in the same way, and provides that kind of assistive tool. And so as we continue to explore, I think, opportunities for AI at Honeywell, it's definitely something that's on our radar as we're thinking about, innovating and creating more AI products for our customers too.
But let's hear now from Rolando and Sudi. What strategies do you use to educate faculty, staff, and students about the importance of accessibility? We can start with Rolando first.
Sure. So one of the things or the strategies that has been really successful for us is to convey the need of why accessibility matters. And this is something that Annie mentioned earlier. And we do it in certain ways, because when we talk to like provosts, chancellors, academic leaders, you don't use the same why or the case. Sometimes you need to shift your strategy and how do you build that case. And that's why we create resources such as the Why Teach or Why Learn Accessibility fact sheet. And these are resources that we build to kind of convey the need to the students, which is usually really easy to do because they do care, they understand, and they want to do something about it, right? And then why teach it? Why incorporate accessibility education in your courses? And then also convey the need that there are companies like Honeywell, like Microsoft, looking for people who are skilled and have accessibility skills. And that's how you kind of create opportunities for yourself, but also drive that need or close that gap that exists out there in the industry. Another strategy that has been really helpful, especially when working with faculty, is providing a guiding framework, because we speak to so many different faculty from so many different disciplines. Sometimes they ask, what do I teach? Where do I go? What do I need to do? And we kind of built a resource around it called the Fundamental Concepts and Skills. And we built this resource with the help from our industry partners, our disability advocacy groups, as well as government partners, etc. And it kind of lays out like different knowledge areas where they could start incorporating the know what, the know why, and the know how, along with professional skills such as negotiation, communication, teamwork, etc., that are also required for implementing accessible design. Also, another successful strategy has been building a learning ecosystem. We have built online self-paced courses. We have built webinars, ready-to-use materials, which is really, really useful when working with faculty, because it's less work that you take out of their plate, right? Like Brisa mentioned earlier, they have so much to do, and this is feels like adding something else. So how can you take that complexity out? Just provide templates, provide resources that they can use and adapt. And also create more extended professional development programs, such as a fellowship, the Teach Access by Design, or Student Academy, which are available for those that have that time and availability or want to learn more and through a formal process, right? Also, it's very important that we design with intentionality, because if we design our training with intentionality, learners will be able to see what we're trying to do. They will try to understand it, and it's something that we do. We're doing it this way. For example, whenever we present, we say, this is Rolando speaking, etc., or we point out two strategies that we're including, so they click on them and then kind of like understand how it looks in what they do each day. And that also involves taking consideration of the context, because as we explained with our collaboration with universities outside of the United States, we need to understand how this conversations around disability and accessibility are happening. And we need to frame those resources for those specific contexts. And finally, it's very important in any educational process, modeling desired practices and outcome. If we want them to incorporate accessible education, we need to be modeling those throughout the way, and kind of like I mentioned, pointing to those strategies and those things you've done along the way.
Thank you, Rolando. So now I want to hear from Sudi. What's Hunter's college strategy?
At Hunter, Brisa, educating faculty, staff, and students about accessibility has been an ongoing effort. And what I've learned over the years is that the best approach to keep it engaging, relatable, and integrated into our everyday work, rather than treating it as an extra or overwhelming step. For faculty and staff, I've learned accessibility isn't something that should feel like another box to check. I mentioned that before. That's why I've made it a point to weave accessibility into regular conversations, whether it's through quick tips in our newsletters, emails, or departmental meetings. A casual reminder, like, we get an email from faculty members and say, hey, by the way, if you add all text to image, it only takes a few seconds, but it makes a huge difference for the students. That can make the faculty realize accessibility is easy to incorporate. And one thing that I've learned incredibly effective is showing, not just telling. Rather than just explaining why accessibility matters, we like to show it. Invite them to our Access Center, show them some of the technologies, softwares, and how hardwares. How does it help the students? Whether it's through quick screen reader demo or color contrast checks or anything that is possible. We hook the faculty with we hook them up with our assistive technology specialists so they can have some hands-on experience and observation. And when faculty and staff experience accessibility barriers firsthand, it clicks in a way that no policy explanation ever could. And sharing real student experiences also makes an impact. I've had faculty completely change the way they design their courses after learning directly from the student about how simple changes like making PDF accessible transform their ability to keep up in the class. We have also worked hard to make accessibility training fun and interactive. Faculty already have so much on their plate, so we introduced things like bite-sized, on-demand tutorial instead of long, overwhelming workshops. This is something that CUNY-wide, everyone, I think, experiences, some more and some less. We have even explored gamifying the process with small changes like make your course more accessible and deal with each issue and question and concern on an individual basis and tell them we are there to assist them, not to pose any hardship on them. And keep them in the loop has been a big priority. For us in our office at Hunter, every semester we publish a newsletter. We discuss the questions and barriers that we faced the prior semester. What were some of the technical barriers the students faced? What are some of the suggestions we have? What are some of the best practices in the industry that we want to share with them? And we have gotten some very good results as a result of that. Faculty, students, everyone reaches out with complimenting and asking more questions, asking more details, which is excellent. And I think that has been very rewarding for this staff.
Thank you, Rolando, Suri, Erica, and Annie, for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. This has been an incredible conversation, I think, highlighting both the challenges but the opportunities in accessibility training. I think your dedication to making accessibility an essential skill in today's workforce is truly inspiring. And I know the audience have gained a lot of knowledge from your perspectives. And of course, a big thank you to this audience for joining us today at Ability Summit. Your engagement and commitment to accessibility help drive meaningful progress. Thank you all for today's conversation.